and welcome to Quality of Life Radio, hosted by Lisa and Nancy, editors of BigBlendMagazine.com.
The gong has spoken. We have an important guest joining us on the show today, Robert-Pardi. He is joining us to talk about his book called Chasing Life, the remarkable true story about love, joy, and achievement against all odds. And you think about true love and what, you take those vows when you get married through sickness and health, and I think he understands all of that. He was a caregiver to his wife, who also worked in palliative care, and she ended up with breast cancer twice, and he went through the whole journey with her, standing by her side and also being her caregiver. So we're very happy to have him on the show today to talk about, again, his book, Chasing Life. You can go to his website, Chasing-Life-thebook.com. It's an Amazon bestseller, too, right? Robert, welcome. How are you?
All right. Thank you very much. And, yes, I was very excited to see it as an Amazon bestseller.
Yeah, good
Awesome.
for you. And so I know you split your time from New York and Italy, and I mean the last name Pardi tells us all. Am I even pronouncing it correctly? I'm terrible with names.
You know what? You are pronouncing it correctly because that's sort of the way I know how to do it. Even though I'm living in Italy and I speak Italian, I can't do the whole R, that type of thing. So there should be a little rolling R, it should be Pardi. But I can't do it, so Pardi is fine.
It is Pardi.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's good.
Pardi. You know what it is? It's from living in Mexico. We used to live in Mexico. And the yeah. Uh-oh. We hang out with dogs. That sounds terrible. To the dog. That sounds terrible. We're off to a good start.
I tried everything possible. Like I put some Italians told me to put like a pencil between my teeth, and I said, you know what, this is my R. This is the way it's going to be. We don't use an R in New York City, really. We say, instead of sure, we say sure. We don't have that type of R. So water instead of water. What can I do? That's
we're surrounded by New Yorkers.
signature.
We're recording this while we're in Lake Worth, Florida. We pet sit as we travel full time across the country, and now during COVID, it was like, oh crap, now what? And we ended up pet sitting, which is cool because we're animal lovers. We love it, and it's become our new thing. So, by the way, you might hear Cyrus, the little pup Cyrus, bark in the background at some point because other dogs may walk by, but let me tell you where we are in Lake Worth. You could be walking down the street and you are going to hear more New Yorkers than Floridians. I don't know if we even know a Floridian, just saying. It's all New Yorkers here. But tell us about, Chasing Life, the book. Nancy just finished it. And this is really, like I said in the beginning, the intro, we talk about in sickness and health. And this is such a commitment when two come together, And you have this blossoming career out there in the world of finance and stocks and all that stuff. Nancy and I go, I don't know what you're talking about. We're hiding under the newspaper kind of thing. So, you do all that good stuff. And then your wife, Desiree, amazing work that she's just, out there in the medical world and also in palliative care, if I said that right even. That's a whole other journey. We actually have a couple friends who are doulas. There's doulas in birth and doulas in the end of life, or moving to the next stage. And it's wild, this story of your wife. How did you meet her? Tell us a little bit about the beginning.
Sure, I'll tell you everything because she will probably be the most amazing woman I'll ever know in my life. To date, she is the most amazing woman I've ever met. And I'm still completely in love with her, but that's another story. So I met her, we went to Stony Brook University, and she was 17, I was 19. It was her first day of freshman year. And not to give away what's in the book, because the way we met was rather unique, let's say. But my wife was a very determined go-getter, let's say, and I was lucky enough that she fancied me, for lack of a better word, and made sure that she was going to let me know that she liked me. And it started from there. And I have to tell you, from the moment I met her, now I can't say it was love at first sight, because I wasn't used to a woman. Look, I was a kid, I was 19, but I wasn't used to a female energy like that, because I grew up very Italian American. The women did definitely take a back seat to the men. And here I have this woman, very, very strong-willed, determined, opinionated, challenging me on things. And I was just like, who are you really? But that really set us up for an amazing partnership, I have to say, because we grew up together. We really did. Like, when I look back on our relationship, we had a very unique philosophy, and my wife believed more that a relationship or a marriage, a marriage is more like DNA. So, you start to separate, and it's at that point you work to pull yourself back to center, where I always believed basically it's 1 + 1 = 3. There's not really this idea of someone completing you, or, you feel whole with someone. It's, you add your part into the center, someone else adds their part, and that's the entity that has to be supported. That relationship becomes an entity in and of itself. So that's how we met. And let's say I was blown away soon after meeting her. Called my mom from a payphone in my dorm and said I met the woman that I was going to marry.
Wow.
And, I was 19.
You were 19? 19?
Wow. 19. I was sure.
Wow.
Huh.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I love it. When you're talking about, the hope where somebody doesn't complete you, where it's like you bring yourself to the table. Like Khalil Gibran, I always bring this up on shows, and I still can't get the thing right, but he talks about in a relationship, you have a relationship with yourself. So it's like a tree branch, or you have the trunk, right? And you go off on your branch. That's you. And then there's Desiree on her branch. And then you have your branch together. And that's like a whole other relationship. And I think it's so important that we understand. And I think back in the day, we didn't quite get that. I don't know. I mean, we were also surviving in a different way, when you look.
It's kind of like now women get to be kind of equal. So it's not like before. I look at my parents, where my mom was completely dependent in every facet on my dad. She didn't learn to drive. She didn't have a job. She never really worked until after he passed on, and that lasted 2 weeks. She was completely not a whole person in a way for life as we know it now. And my dad was like the big, strong dude that did everything, and then he got a terminal illness. And then the whole thing shifted. And there were 6 children in my family. And later I found out that he had a couple more, and there were 6 kids in this family and 6 kids in that family.
And
well,
that goes, that's a whole other story.
That's a whole other deal. But so I learned early on, you better fend for yourself, you better grow up real fast, and you better be smart and use everything you have. You have to use your brain. You have to have energy, and you can't have a pity party about any of it. You
Sure.
have to get on. You have to get on with it. But that is so easy to say, and really not so easy to do.
Yeah, I think, like you said, that whole idea of sort of dependency, that's sort of what I mean about growing up in an Italian-American household, because I saw that to a certain extent with my mom and my father, and but definitely with the grandparents. And I had an amazing grandmother. It was my paternal grandmother, which is very funny because I did not get along with my dad for a million different reasons. We'll just frame that under he was a very abusive alcoholic, and we don't have to talk about that story because we detract from something else. But
well, now you're talking like Nancy's language there.
Yeah.
So this grandmother, her name was Mary. She lost her husband before I was born, so I never knew my grandfather. Funny enough, I knew my great grandfather, which is where I live in the town that he immigrated from. So it's so funny, full circle stuff.
Wow.
But she would tell me, and here was a woman that didn't know how to drive, had very poor education, but having lost her husband, she would find all kinds of crazy jobs. But she would get on a bus and maybe go to Philadelphia, and we'd be like, Graham, why did you do that? And she's like, well, I've never been to Philadelphia. And she taught me at a very young age. She said, Robert, live like a gypsy. Don't be afraid to do things. And this is really what you're talking about, right? You're traveling all over the country.
Exactly.
So, and she taught me a lot about that idea of, doing what you want to do, living the life you want to, and being whole. And my wife was also that way on a different spectrum, and her parents really brought her up to be so independent and so strong that when we met, there was, even though we were, let's say, kids, because we really were, there was this idea of don't change me, I'm not going to change you. And so I think that all of this is so amazing on how it built within our relationship. So when we were confronted with some tough issues, we were a team.
Yeah.
I like that you well, I think Desiree put you in that position of caregiver, and the first time in Dubai? You guys were in Dubai, and so talk about the male-female roles of
really.
Yeah, the women aren't. We had a similar, not the same, but similar. When we were in Mexico, my step-grandfather had a stroke, we think. We're still not sure.
Yeah.
What happened to him, but they put little pinky things out of him, and they had a little cup. I don't know what it was.
So
this is pre-Google, we didn't know, but we went down there and we helped. We didn't know if he had a stroke. And anyway, it was a weird thing because it was like the male versus the females. They didn't want to tell us, and then eventually one younger doctor said something about his pee-pee, basically, this is, but that was the second time he went in. So something, he just was all like, it's a mess, kind of pointed down there. And because now we have a language barrier, the whole thing. But you're in Dubai and she's doing this whole medical exam and finds out, okay, but you had to be the one. This is the whole male-female thing. Yeah. No,
but what's very interesting, and especially as an expat, you don't really experience that. And this we're talking. We were in the Emirates in 1998. But it wasn't the male-female dynamic like we think. Actually, I think the UAE is extremely progressive. It really is. There were some crazy things when I lived there. I had to give my wife permission to drive. But what happened, I think, with the diagnosis. And my wife was in medical school. She just finished her Ph.D. and she was doing an MD Ph.D. So she wanted to take a year off before going back to the medical school aspect of it to live with me in Abu Dhabi because I had gotten a job in Abu Dhabi. And so you usually need a medical screening to live in the country just to get a visa. Yeah. And they're checking for, diseases that could be communicated like tuberculosis or something like that. So yeah, even all the sexual diseases.
Yeah.
Now I think what wound up happening is, yes, it was a Muslim doctor, but trained in Massachusetts, and I think here was this woman that just turned 31, looked super healthy, an American, and he was rather young, and here she was with very aggressive late-stage breast cancer. And I think he broke the news to me in a way more because he didn't know, like, all the emotions that would be involved. And it worked out perfectly because my wife lived a very amazing philosophy from the moment I met her. She didn't believe in judging anybody or anything, including herself. And that was so extreme that she never looked at her grades. So she would ask me to look at her grades. She never knew her GPA. She never knew her score on the MCATs. And I was the one who filled them out on an application. So when the doctor told me, it almost worked perfectly for her philosophy, because when I asked her, so what do you want to know? And she said, only the next step. She also said to me, Robert, because I know enough to be dangerous to myself. And so that's why she asked. She didn't, at that point, it wasn't really putting me in the caregiver role, because, I think when you're confronted with a diagnosis like this, and we were very young, we had this belief of, let's go all out and get it. We're a team. We're going to battle it. It wasn't necessarily caregiving the way we talk about caregiving, because it seemed like it was going to be a finite period of time. She wanted to be very aggressive. She defined what aggressive meant to me. As her illness progressed, she also defined what quality of life meant and whether or not, when's the time basically to stop treatment. And so that was what she laid out for me, and that was my role.
Throughout the book, when I'm reading it, I'm like, I can so relate to some of it, and then some of her, I was like, whoa, dude. She didn't want to know the details because, so she really made me think, or you made me think through her about details. And then I'm like, that's like court cases. It's the details are there to defend the end position. And she's like, oh, let's just go to the end. She trusted so much that she just went, no, let's just go to the end. I don't want to go through all the details. Let's just get to the end. In a way, and I'm like, that makes sense when I think people know.
Well, that's so interesting you're saying that, not to cut you off, but,
no, it's okay.
This whole idea of going to the end. My wife, honestly, the not wanting to know the details for her was a coping mechanism. I want to know I'm doing my best. I don't want any evidence that I'm not doing my best, and I want to be aggressive. So when the cancer came back, Desiree was not really surprised. I was devastated. I mean, that was when I had to pick myself up, and I had to learn some big, serious lessons very quickly about impermanence, about really what caregiving is, surrender and letting go of the outcome. But for her, it was, okay, look, this is something I'm going to deal with. This is what life means to me. How do I create that bridge so, Robert, what I need on that bridge along the way. But don't tell me how you're building the bridge. Don't tell me what's happening during the bridge, unless she really needed to know, like we had to take out part of her liver. It wasn't like I could just wheel her in to the hospital and say, close your eyes. So,
yeah, exactly.
But she never knew the extent of her disease. When she passed away, I'm sure physically she knew. But the cancer recurred in her liver. And for the entire time, I did everything I could to make her believe that it was still only in her liver, because it wouldn't have changed anything for her, because what was her guiding principle was quality of life. And I always joke, her job came number one. I like to believe I came second, but for her, quality of life was doing what she wanted to do. You know, she actually she wasn't studying palliative care when she first started, but because of her disease, she chose palliative care. And she actually became the founding director of palliative care at New York Hospital while having metastatic breast cancer.
Wow.
And she thought it was only in her liver, but it was in her liver, one lung, and her bones at that time. She had a met on her lower spine. And, you know, right before she passed away, she had metastases throughout one lung, her peritoneum, her small intestines, almost all her bones, and her liver. And she didn't need to know. That didn't change the equation for her if she could get up every morning and do what she needed to do.
You know, this cancer thing, it really freaks me out because I look now where we do pet sitting and a lot of dogs have allergies and then they get cancer. And we're looking at it like, when did dogs start getting cancer? Well, maybe they just died and nobody diagnosed cancer. You know, and then I was reading this article about Roundup in Monsanto and how all the food is sprayed and how when they spray the crops, that doesn't just stay on those crops, that this chemicalization of what we do for the profit of the people who own Monsanto. Thank you very much. You know,
they're not Monsanto anymore.
Well,
but anyway, sorry.
Yeah, whatever. They just keep doing this for the bottom dollar, and I wonder how much of what people go through in any, not just cancer, in any terminal illness has to do with what we've done to the environment.
Well, that is such an amazing question because, you know, I could go in many different directions with this, just with, you know, anecdotal evidence. But my wife had an amazing oncologist who did a lot of research, and I think he actually wound up being in upstate New York. He was one of the key people that closed down one of those agricultural plants. But I remember him saying, you know, women's breast milk had to go through the FDA approval to sell it. It wouldn't be sold because of all the chemicals, because it's it accumulates. You pass it to the child, it's in their system, and then they have more. And so, you know, is it the environment?
Generation.
Is it?
Yeah,
Sorry?
it goes from grandparent, like the DNA of that stuff goes from grandparent to not the daughter to the next. Yeah.
Right. She didn't have any family history of breast cancer. She was extremely healthy. She was a jogger, 30 years old back in 1997. Yes, they found a lump in her breast, actually at 29. Her GYN said, don't worry about it. No fault on him whatsoever, because 29 years old in 1996, 1997, that woman was not going to go for a mammogram. It was unheard of at that time. Unfortunately, it's not anymore. So, you know, the thing about pets and all this other stuff, we're so better now at analysis and detecting. Maybe it had always happened. Who knows? Like my wife, they claimed she was in remission for maybe 9 months or so, but we didn't use PET scans at that time, which are much more accurate. So she had a CAT scan. Maybe there was a small metastases that never went away, but the CAT scan didn't pick it up. With PET scans now, they pick up that little thing, so we're better at diagnosing. So there are many different factors in that, but I do remember her oncologist saying, you know, women's breast milk would not be allowed to be sold on the shelf. And that was shocking. I remember him talking to us about, he said, you know what, get an organic mattress, because an organic mattress made out of natural resin or something like that is fire resistant without all the chemicals. We sleep on a mattress every night that is sprayed with all kinds of chemicals to not go on fire. You know, he just made us very aware of the environment. Now, I live I live in a very small town in the middle of Italy. There's 900 people. I'm in a national park, and I can tell you, the food is completely. I absolutely, it's heaven, and the food is completely different. And I'll just say something. It's also where Madonna's family comes from. I mean, it's where my family comes from. She's never been, and I think she should bring her family to go see. This town is so gorgeous.
But that's what I think Europe has always understood: topsoil, the importance of topsoil, and
the
also
importance of rotating crops. Like there's a period of time I can only eat zucchini. Yeah, would I love a different vegetable? But that's not what they grow. And so you learn to deal with it. We should not be eating tomatoes all year long.
Exactly. No. And your body is seasonal. I mean, it's interesting for us being gypsies. There are health tolls. I know we're going to get it. I know it. I feel it at times. And I go like, okay, we need to get to a place and completely detox in some way. I wonder, our lifestyle is in this kind of, we've lived I don't know, I can't say most of it now, but most of our time in Africa and England and Mexico and in those regions. And
then you come back here.
There was a, I think,
go ahead, sorry.
Go.
No.
This is your show.
Thank you very much. I was just going to interject there because you said, we're going to get it. And here's a very interesting thing that I learned through the journey with my wife. And actually, to tell you the truth, we both learned it, right, because of the diagnosis. And it's about waking up to life. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, and I know this is going to be very hard to hear, none of us are meant to survive life. Mm-hmm. None of us.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So why do we wait for that diagnosis from a doctor a lot of times to wake up? And that's what the whole idea behind the book was about, is like we learned how to wake up. But the thing is, you know what? If you're conscious and you consciously create your life, you're living an amazing life regardless of the adversity. Because one thing I learned for sure is joy is all around us. Let me put it this way.
Mm-hmm. It is. Even of all the drama that's going on in the world, it is. When you have a belly laugh, a good belly laugh, you can't beat it. Period.
Well, just think of, we stop and everybody will stop and look at a rainbow, and you feel that little twinkle inside, and that's joy, right? But the thing is, white light is rainbow, right? We're living in white light all the time. We're surrounded by rainbows. And so it sounds so corny, but joy is not something you can capture. Joy is something that you just need to lean into and open yourself up to it. And, have that belly laugh. And even though we're adults, play a little bit. I go down a slide all the time. Every time I see a slide, I'll go down a slide. I was just with a friend in New York. I took her on a merry-go-round. I'm like, we got to go on a merry-go-round. Why? Because, it's a little moment of joy. But that's what we learned. My wife and I say it all the time. When people say to me, oh, it's so sad she died so young. And I'm like, well, you know what?
She lived it.
We don't, exactly. We didn't think of life or measure life by the number of years, but the moments of joy. And she lived a joyful, accelerated life, but wow, do we have just joy and laughter and giggles.
Nice. One time, Lisa, was it Kenya or South Africa where we had the come as a child party?
Oh, come as you were in your childhood party, and everybody dressed up as their kids and brought
as a kid
and they
brought
were
a toy.
Their childhood and brought their own toys.
Everybody,
it was. I was a kid when all the adults came to the party, and the adults started arguing with each other over the toys, and we played Ring a Ring a Rosie. I mean, it was crazy. But as a kid,
it was so
watching
much fun.
The adults become kids, it was the best party on the planet. It really was.
Awesome.
I mean, the food was all like kid food. the drinks were kid Kool-Aid with vodka in it, whatever. But but it was the best freaking party ever.
We only go to a certain point being a kid, right? We should throw a little bit of the vodka in.
I know.
But it was really interesting how certain people would go off and I remember the two guys with the toy trucks. The one had a dump truck, and the other guy just had a normal truck, and he was really angry that he didn't get the dump truck, and the dump truck guy kept dumping dirt on his truck. I was like, and they really went down to 4-year-olds. I'm like, oh my gosh, they're going to start hitting each other. It was so much fun.
but that's what it's cool. Robert, you're now a life coach over all of this. See how all of this has changed. I just got to bring that up.
Yeah, well, that's what was first of all. So the whole dump truck thing and everything, as you got me giggling on this one. What that really is that it's that childhood enthusiasm, wonder, curiosity. I mean, sometimes we try to figure life out so deeply, and we try to get all our plans in motion that we become a victim to all of it. Because we'll never really know. I tattooed a question mark on my ankle to remind me I will never, ever know everything, and it's okay. Why don't I go through life being a little surprised and just enjoy the aspect that I can be surprised instead of trying to figure it all out. But all of this that we're talking about, I wound up, here I am, I'm an investment banker guy, right? In my mind, money was going to be everything. I was a banker. And that was really because for me, money was going to save me as a child. The one thing I thought about to get away from my dad was the more money I made, the further I could get away. Yeah. So, and then I fall in love with this woman and I learn other life lessons. And so I wound up becoming her life coach as her caregiver, because the interesting thing is, caregiving, and I had to learn this, caregiving has nothing to do with fixing. We want to fix. I mean, I had the Superman complex. I wanted to be God. I tried to do the magic wand and she was going to be okay. But when I learned to surrender, caregiving is all about bearing witness and supporting someone through their life's journey. That's what my role was. My role was to not try to fix an object, but to see a person and let her know she was a person.
You became the Palliative-Care.
And that's how I became a life coach.
Yeah. But the journey is that, and I think we all have to learn some of that. And I think that's the beauty of what you've written. And you've got to come back on the show. This is just too quick. This was. I'm
so sorry about that because
I know our timing. We've had technical problems, people. We would have had him on for a lot longer, but Robert. But life said we have to do what we have to do, and we have to mold with it. And we can't control it. Apparently, we cannot control the technical gods, but you can come back on our party. We can't control
anything. If we break the myth of control and stop trying so hard to control. And that doesn't mean that you don't have goals, and that's a whole nother discussion. But how often are we trying to control things and we have expectations? And one of the things I learned for sure is, and I say, I'll give two of my favorite quotes. So one is that expectations are the blocks with which we build our prison. And if left untouched, they become the warden of our prison.
Ooh,
expectations are just a hypothesis we have. Why? The more curious you are, or the more you're not tied to the outcome and more to the journey, the less you'll feel that pressure of, well, once I get the end result, I'll be happy. No, be happy during the process. And the other thing that, Des and I learned in terms of this whole joy thing is that it's only when we value the ordinary moments that we live an extraordinary life.
I love that.
She and I
love that.
Thanks. We had the ability to stay in a 5-star hotel because of the money I used to make. And you know what? I don't remember them. but I remember her laughing with the dog.
Yeah,
you know?
See?
So,
yeah. Yeah, that's exactly it.
Yeah.
I mean, we travel. We're gypsies, you know, because that's really who we are. And people look at us sometimes like we're weird, but we really don't care about what they think. However, I do try to control our radio schedules and technical things, and apparently it said no.
Yeah, well, of course, because that's also business. But you know, what I would
sometimes,
say is, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, sometimes you have to realize you cannot. I mean, I think this is the second time we've had to reschedule you, like, you know, because of things, outer things, you know. And I think there's a lesson in that. It is true. And I'm a Virgo, like things must move at this time. And life always tells me that's a bunch of crap. And Nancy laughs and she goes, "Oh, get over it. As we're going to record with you,
Nancy,
she's like,
what's
get
your
over
sign?
it.
I'm a Taurus, and I'm a bull, and I don't care what happens. I'm just going to push through it.
We take care of each other. We're very good. We're very compatible. We do swear at each other and have a glass of wine at the end of the day.
Exactly.
But we make sure everything happens because of that balance, that yin and yang, you know. And I think what you and Desiree, I mean, it's an amazing story, beautiful story. I'm so glad you wrote your book. Everyone, Chasing Life, the remarkable true story about love, joy, and achievement against all odds. Go get it now. It's on Amazon, bestseller. Go to chasinglifethebook.com. And also, Robert, you can keep up with him as a life coach at Robert-Pardi.com. That's not party like we like to party. It's PARDI.com. So keep up with him there. And, of course, keep up with us at BigBlendRadio.com. Thank you so much, Robert. I know we've made you late.
Thank
but,
you.
You know, that's it.
No problem at all. This was just so much fun. Thank you very much.
Good to talk to you.
Take care.